The show starts soon and he's nowhere to be found.
David.
Well, maybe we could fake it if he doesn't show up. Hey, I wonder if Lori Albright could pass for Mike Carney.
David!
Oh, who am I kidding? She couldn't grow a mustache that quickly anyway.
David.
Huh?
Zooming Live is tomorrow, not today. It's on Monday from 8 to 9 p.m.
Yes, and remember, we're doing the show via Zoom, and it's live, so Mike Carney won't be in the same space as you in any case.
Oh, that's right. So everybody, put it on your calendar. Tomorrow, Monday, August 24, 8 to 9 p.m. UUCC Zoom In, live, with special guest Mike Carney, hosted by me, David Cantor. Check your inbox for your Zoom invite to the show. Looking forward to seeing all of you then. Bye now.
Good grief. I hope every week isn't like this one.
Hi, I'm Jeremy Holmes. I'm glad that you're here for this service about beloved conversations. Are you interested in keeping the conversations about race and diversity issues going? I am the facilitator for the Authentic Diversity Covenant Group here at UUCC. We all come to these conversations with different perspectives based upon our own unique cultures and upbringings. In our group, we have conversations about those upbringings, cultures, and different racial and other diversity issues that are going on in our world to try and become better allies and stewards for authentic diversity in our congregation and in our communities. If you're interested, please let me know. There will also be a covenant group sign up in the fall. I look forward to hearing from you. Enjoy the service.
Thanks for joining the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Cleveland for our virtual worship service. The last time I had an opportunity to extend a welcome for a service, it was only the third version we had done like this. Who knew we'd still be at it 5 months later and for the foreseeable future? Thanks for staying connected with us in this way. Some of you watching are likely members and friends of the congregation seeking a way to stay connected to the community in this forced time of separation. I also want to give a shout out to anyone who may be just discovering us. We are a welcoming congregation. As Unitarian Universalists, one of our core principles is recognizing the inherent worth and dignity of every person. As a community, we recognize the interconnected web of all existence. As a pluralist faith, we're happy to have you join us, whether you celebrate the earth, the goddess, love Jesus, or find your inspiration and comfort from the reliability of science or humanist teachings. Our covenant with one another transcends race, gender identity, sexual identity, financial means, age, and all of the other elements of who we are that some might use to divide us. This service has been prepared by some of the participants in the recent Beloved Conversations program. You'll hear from the church leaders who were committed to bringing this important racial justice work to the congregation, as well as some of the members who were profoundly impacted by the work we engaged in as part of that opportunity. You'll learn how you might engage in this work going forward and what our next steps are. Our goal is to give those who may not have been able to personally participate this time around a sense of what we experienced and how this work can continue to enrich our community as well as that of the community around us. We hope that you'll enjoy our reflections, the readings we've chosen, and the musical selections, and that you find some inspiration and welcome distraction from the concerns of the day in the time that you spend with us today. Thanks for being with us. This is the message of our faith, to act with passion in the face of injustice, to love with courage in the midst of life's pain. This is the meaning of our chalice flame. May it empower our hearts until we are together again.
Hi, I'm Nancy King-Smith, Chair of the Racial Justice Leadership Team here at UUCC. This summer, in addition to the strangeness of the pandemic, it seems that our country has awakened to the continuing pervasiveness of systemic racism in a new way. Our new congregation has been exploring it from our beginnings a year and a half ago, with our service and discussion of Robin DiAngelo's White Fragility, and continuing with various films, book discussions, worship services, and programs dealing with racial justice. Our racial justice leadership team, with funding from the congregation, organized UUCC's participation in the Beloved Conversations program. 40 people came together for a weekend retreat and then met in 4 small groups for 2 hours each week for 8 weeks. The last couple of sessions met by Zoom once we were no longer able to get together in person. I want to give a special shout out to all of the participants, and especially the facilitators of the small groups and the members of the racial justice leadership team for their dedicated work on this program. The Beloved Conversations curriculum was developed for UU congregations by the Foz Institute, a part of the Meadville Lombard Seminary in Chicago. It is a teaching and learning curriculum that holds both the tensions and joys of an intentional multicultural community. The curriculum assumes that every conversation with another human being is a cross-cultural conversation, even if your conversation partner is from the same racial group. Beloved Conversations creates a first step, a learning laboratory for how to live healthily in a multiracial, multicultural, and theologically diverse community, and how to use those learnings to work for a racially just world, both within and beyond the congregation. In today's service, you will hear from several people who participated in Beloved Conversations as they describe their experiences and the impact it has had on them. Toward the end of the service, we'll talk about how the program has already inspired the congregation, ideas we have for the future, and ways that you can get involved.
Wake up, everybody, no more sleeping in bed. No more backward thinking, time for thinking ahead. The world has changed so very much from what it used to be. There is so much hatred, war and poverty.
Wake up all the teachers, time to teach a new way. Maybe then they'll listen to what you have to say. 'Cause they're the ones who's growing up, and the world is in their hands. When you teach the children, teach them the very best you can.
Every week when we gathered, we took time for what we call joys and concerns, where people had a chance to come here before service and light a candle in silence, or to write in our book and have their joy or sorrow read with the congregation and put a pebble in the water. We can't do that right now, but I'm thinking about all of you. I know there are several joys in our community. For that, I'm grateful. I also know there are difficult times for people, and people have sorrow. And that sorrow deserves support and care. For all these things, and lastly, for gratitude for us being together, I light our candles.
Spirit, I would really rather not learn this. Didn't think I needed to. I thought someone else could do it. Thought a leader was coming to do it. Thought the young people could do it. Or that the elders could do it. Or the professionals. Or I don't want to learn it, 'cause it means letting go of something I hold dear. Letting go of being someone who knows the answers. Letting go of being someone who doesn't know. Letting go of the way I see the world. Letting go of how I might have to change. Letting go of certainty, of logic, of facts, of control. Of the myth that you can live on this earth and not harm. Or the myth that I can't learn anything new. Help me to learn it, please. And then help me to live what I have learned and to do right by the gift of being taught.
Hi, my name is Roschelle Ogbuji, and I want to talk about my reflection on BLUU conversations. This was an amazing experience for me. For those of you who were in the first session, and for those of you who aren't, I'm going to tell you that I went into it scared and afraid. I was a part of the Racial Justice Task Force. I was planning and planned for 2 years to bring this, but when it came down to it, I felt afraid to engage on this level of intimacy and vulnerability with people that I didn't know at the time, but I was afraid that I might walk away and not have the same safety in my faith community. And I went to the first day, and I didn't want to come back the second day, but I did because my kids were, for me, I needed to do it, and I needed to know that this was a safe place for me and my kids compelled me to come back for that second day. And it was in that process that I actually shared the story with the people in the BLUU conversation that I was afraid. I was afraid that this was going to fail. I was afraid of being hurt. I was afraid of finding out something that I couldn't unknow. I was afraid that people weren't necessarily going to be open and honest. And so these were all my fears. And so I'm saying this because you may have some of those fears too when the BLUU conversation comes up again. And I just want to let you know that just like you, I was afraid. But let me tell you something. I did it afraid. Even though I was scared, my love for my congregation, my love for wanting to push us further in being more cohesive and understanding those differences and those sameness, I knew that I had to let my fear subside, and I had to have, here's a big word, faith. I had to trust the process. That in order for me to learn if this was a safe congregation, if this was a place that was truly beloved and a beloved congregation and a beloved place, I had to be vulnerable. And it's scary. But when you bring about vulnerability in a safe place of understanding and in searching, what you'll find and what I found is that there were other people who felt the same way, but they were willing to do it afraid as well. And so one of the things that we reflected on is privilege. And we reflected on microaggressions and understood and talked about what these things are. We talked about all the different ways that we may have had advantages and disadvantages growing up. The thing that I remember most is an exercise where we all were standing on a line and things were called out, and we either moved one step further if we came from a two-parent home, or two steps back if we were raised by a single parent. And one of the things that I realized is that I had straight privilege. I didn't realize that, well, let me say this. I did realize that. I didn't realize how much that affected other people until I saw it in our group. So, what are you saying, Roschelle? What I'm saying is that sometimes we are afraid to try some new things. Sometimes we don't know if this whole thing on race is what we really want to tackle. But let me tell you that I was able to connect with people in our congregation that I would have never connected with. And I was able to understand them better. I was able to share my fears and my hopes and my dreams for our congregation. And when I walked away from this situation, instead of being afraid, I was hopeful. I knew that this was the congregation that I had been looking for. I knew that it was the congregation that I had left my Christian church because there was so much hypocrisy. And I knew that this was the group of people that I wanted to sojourn with, to find out how much further we could make our community an anti-racist congregation. And what I learned is that the beloved community started with me and letting go of my fears and willing to press in and lean into the tough conversations and also the beautiful ones as well. I hope that you consider doing a beloved conversation when it comes up again, because if you ask any of us who have gone through it, we can tell you that we're forever changed and forever better for our congregation.
We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we cry. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive in this great turning we shall learn to lead in
So why are we trying to have beloved conversations? A beloved is someone you really care about, someone you love. And that's the kind of community we want to create, one where people feel supported and loved. And it's the kind of world we want to see too, one where everyone is valued and can live and grow in peace. But often our differences get in the way of this. Sometimes people don't understand each other because their experiences of the world are different. Conversations across race, class, and other differences can be very tense. People can hurt each other without meaning to. Sometimes they wonder whether they are doing or saying the right thing, but they just can't figure it out. Sometimes they're just thinking about what they want and don't stop to think how their actions will affect other people. And of course, sometimes they don't care about other people at all, just themselves or their group. There's a story in our own town of Shaker Heights where people had all of these motivations. Some of you probably know about the Shaker Heights barricades. The story started back in the 1950s and 60s as African Americans began moving into Shaker Heights and the nearby Cleveland area. Some Shaker residents were prejudiced and did not like the idea of Black people living in their neighborhoods. They didn't all feel this way, but a lot did. One of the things they did was a name change. Have you ever noticed that when you're on Chagrin Boulevard, once you get close to Cleveland, the name changes to Kinsman? Well, this was because Kinsman was associated with Black neighborhoods in Cleveland, and a lot of Shaker residents were not too happy living on the same street. Some of them were even embarrassed to say they lived on Kinsman. They couldn't move the street, so they did the next best thing. They changed the name. It was around this time that they first started talking about putting up barriers to block off traffic from Cleveland, but it took a while. In 1976, temporary traffic barriers were placed on 6 streets in the Loman neighborhood. Some of them blocked Cleveland drivers from entering Shaker streets. Now, Shaker officials said that the residents had asked for the barriers to be put up to prevent accidents and traffic jams. However, a lot of people in Cleveland did not buy this explanation. They thought the barriers were put up to keep Black people out of Shaker Heights. To get around them, you'd have to drive several blocks out of your way. Most people interpreted the barriers as a big keep out sign. Eventually, signs were put up that said things like no outlet and do not enter. Some people called the barriers the Berlin Wall for Black people. This referred to the period after World War II, when Germany was split right down the middle of their capital city into 2 countries, one communist and one capitalist. In Berlin, the wall was patrolled by soldiers, and for many years, people were not allowed to cross to the other side, even to see family members. Fortunately, the Shaker experience was not that extreme, but it did impact people's lives. Ted Carter was 12 years old when the barriers went up. In a story on IdeaStream last year, he reflected on how that experience affected him. He and his friends lived near Shaker Heights and had always loved riding their bikes through the streets. They'd joke with each other about the mansions they'd live in when they grew up. But one day when he was 12, Ted woke up one morning, set off to explore, and didn't get any farther than the end of his block. There were permanent traffic barricades running across the entire width of his street, and a few others nearby, right at the border between Cleveland and Shaker Heights. It looked like freeway barricades, but a little higher, he said. I would say maybe an inch or 2 higher. They were made of cement, so it pretty much prohibited anything in the street from going forward. The city of Shaker Heights said they were to slow down traffic, but Carter says he and his friends saw something more. I looked at it as the haves and the have-nots, he said, myself being a have-not. That summer, he stopped dreaming about living in one of those big mansions. Do you think Ted got the right message? Seems to me he understood it perfectly. Keep out of our neighborhood. You are not welcome here. Shaker Heights officials told a different story. They claimed that race was not a motivating factor. It was all about traffic flow. One of their arguments was that the Shaker residents who lived near the barriers were African American and were in favor of the barricades, so how could they be racist? I can only speculate about how many black residents supported the barriers. I expect there were some, but I'm sure it wasn't universal. This is an example of how class identity intersects with racial identity, and not everyone has the same opinion. It's important to understand that no one is completely defined by their identity groups, and especially not by a single aspect of their identity. In this case, they were black, but they were also suburbanites worried about quality of life and property values. Over the next 10 years, legal actions were filed to make Shaker Heights take down the barriers. The case went all the way to the Ohio Supreme Court, which upheld Shaker's right to keep the barriers in place. Not everyone was happy with this result. There were protests and boycotts of Shaker businesses. In October of 1987, 50 demonstrators held a protest at the Shaker Rapid. Everett Gregory of Invermore, who was 76 years old at the time, lay down on the railroad tracks at 7:30 a.m., stopping 5 trains with more than 100 commuters. Fortunately, there were no injuries or arrests, but the activists were not successful in getting the barriers removed. I don't live that close to the barriers, but I do live 2 houses from the Shaker-Cleveland border, right where Kinsman turns into Chagrin. The street I live on also has 2 names. On the Cleveland side, where it intersects with Kinsman, it's known as East 154th Street. Once you go north about 4 houses, it turns into Ashby Road. But there's no way of knowing that if you're driving from Kinsman, or at least there wasn't before Google Maps. I always have to tell people, turn at East 154th Street and it will turn into Ashby. If, on the other hand, you're coming from Van Aken, which is in Shaker, then you're fed right on to Ashby. I also have a different zip code from most of Shaker, so whenever I fill out a form online, the city defaults to Cleveland, and I sometimes must change it several times before Shaker will stick. The barriers are still in place today. They have changed over the years. People have tried to pretty them up and make them blend in. Some are now raised cement beds planted with trees. They make it inconvenient to get some places, forcing me to go the long way around. But I don't notice them that much. I just adjust my route as needed. They're a lot like structural racism. No matter their actual size, they have become almost invisible. They are just part of the landscape.
Those who profess to favor freedom and yet deprecate agitation are people who want crops without plowing up the ground. They want rain without thunder and lightning. They want the ocean without the awful roar of its waters. The struggle may be a moral one, or it may be both moral and physical, but it must be a struggle. Power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did, and it never will. Find out what people will submit to, and you have found the exact amount of injustice which will be imposed upon them. The limits of tyrants are prescribed by the endurance of those whom they oppress.
For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. Oh, for each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. Oh, for each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings, and we are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are mothers of courage, fathers of time, daughters of dust, and the sons of great visions. We're sisters of mercy, brothers of love, lovers of life, and the builders of nations. We're seekers of truth, keepers of faith, makers of peace, and the wisdom of ages. We are our grandmother's prayers. We are our grandfather's dreamings, and we are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are mothers of courage, fathers of time, daughters of dust, and the sons of great visions. We're sisters of mercy, brothers of love, lovers of life, and the builders of nations. We're seekers of truth and keepers of faith. We are makers of peace and the wisdom of ages. We are our grandmother's prayers. We are our grandfather's dreamings, and we are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings. We are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. We are one. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings, and we are the breath of...
Each week, we come together as a people. Together, we share stories, love, aspiration. We also share our bounty in ways that express our religious UU values. May this important ritual of sharing abundance remind us that making our world better is a task best shared.
Hi, I'm Bonnie Casey, a member of Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Cleveland. I would like to thank Nancy for leading the Beloved Conversations sessions and getting the speaker and etc. She did a really good job managing all that. And to my group, Seven and Lori were the leaders, and then my fellow passionate people were Peggy, Roschelle, Valerie, Mary, Terry, and Debbie. Since my Beloved Conversations sessions, I have changed a lot. I've become more present. And when I see people, I look them in the eye, greet them, and I do seek out people of color. And when it's appropriate, start up a conversation with them and just convey that I see them. And I see them, and I try to make their day and make my day too. If I hear racist attitudes or anybody, racist opinions or using microaggressions, I will non-confrontationally check them on that. And plus I check myself if my thinking is in error. I'll check myself. I've been donating much more than I ever have to GCC, Black Lives Matter, the Bail Project, and other organizations that are dealing with people that are underserved, underprivileged, and marginalized, and predominantly African American. Through Beloveds, I have networked and met with UCC activists Lori and Eileen. So I've been having weekly meetings with the Action Team for Bail Reform, and I'm taking steps to get petition signed to eliminate cash bail and free persons of electronic monitoring that they have to pay for. And they're already people who don't have a lot of money. And they are stuck in jail for sometimes up to years on a misdemeanor just because they can't afford bail. I never ever dreamed I would be on Facebook at this time in my life, but I'm on it, and I just post things that I think, like about mental health or the racial difference of people that are charged with marijuana between black and white, and progressive prosecutors, how they should be, if they had sensitivity training and things of that nature. I was devastated, like all, with the George Floyd murder of Devin Chauvin's murder of George Floyd. It was just so devastating that it made me participate in protests, Zoom meetings, and dealing with Operation Relentless Pursuit and many, many other organizations. I've been listening to them and learning from them. In the ACLU podcasts, The Steep Road to Freedom, I really immersed myself in the Black Lives Matter movement because it was just devastating. But the strongest and most vivid change that has happened to me since Beloveds is through my research. I've noticed that in the early 1700s, Virginia had passed the set of black codes, or slave laws, which institutionalized lifelong slavery and stipulated that the offspring of a female inherited their enslaved states for their life. Also, viewing the lynchings and the naked bodies of African Americans being auctioned off, viewing the lynchings in the story of Emmett Till, it has just been seared on my mind. I think about it all the time, that African Americans had to live that way, and they're still living in a way, having prejudice. Seeing Spike Lee in his hat that said 1619 just made me sick and tremble, knowing that the blacks have suffered for over 400 years, trying to get treated equally, and also that the plantation mentality is still alive and well and strong in America, particularly with the police officers, prosecutors, judges, white supremacists, and just ordinary people. That plantation mentality is very pervasive. I have so much love and respect for people of color. They're so strong, and they've been treated this way for 400 years. I thrill that the world is waking up, and I hope the movement keeps going until the African Americans are loved and cherished and just on top of the world. I will love them and cherish them and help them in any way I can, as they're still suffering with prejudice and racism on a daily basis, just living their lives. Thank you.
Today's global meditation is by Reverend Dr. Hope Johnson, inspired by Bob Marley. One Love. We are one, a diverse group, here not by coincidence, but because we choose to journey together. We are active and proactive. We care deeply. We live our love as best we can. We are one, working, eating, laughing, playing, singing, storytelling, sharing, and rejoicing. Getting to know each other, taking risks, opening up, questioning, seeking, searching, trying to understand, struggling, making mistakes, paying attention, asking questions, listening, living our answers, learning to love our neighbors, learning to love ourselves, apologizing and forgiving with humility, being forgiven through grace, creating the beloved community. Together, we are one.
As you've heard, participating in Beloved Conversations had a deep impact on many of the participants. In written reflections, people spoke of strengthening their voices by being more willing to speak up and be actively anti-racist in those moments where they might have been afraid or hesitant to do so in the past. Others spoke of understanding microaggressions better and of paying more attention to racial issues in the news. But in addition to the personal learnings, many expressed the value of getting to know members of the congregation better, and of their excitement about the possibilities for moving forward with action in the congregation. At the end of all of the sessions, each group worked on developing ideas for future actions in each of 9 areas of congregational life, such as worship, outreach, religious education, etc. The groups had close to 100 ideas that were distilled down into a number of big ideas and finally into a smaller list from which to set priorities. The ideas gave fodder to the Strategic Planning Task Force that proposed Strategic Goal 3 of intersectional justice that intends to engage more members in justice work that makes our community more equitable, inclusive, and resilient. It inspired the Building and Grounds and Racial Justice leadership teams to find funding for and install the new banners in front of the church, showing our commitment to gay pride and Black Lives Matter. It has fostered planning a number of films, book discussions, and programs around issues of racism. It has opened the possibility for people of color within the congregation to have their own separate caucus when desired. It has confirmed the importance of working with frontline community partners to understand their priorities. Going forward, we intend to continue offering a variety of opportunities for all members of the congregation to become engaged in understanding systemic racism and how we can help dismantle it. The experience of hundreds of congregations who have gone through the Beloved Conversations program is that when the congregation has had close to 40% of their members go through the process, substantive change takes place in becoming a beloved community where systemic racism is addressed and everyone feels welcome. That puts us about 1/3 of the way there. We need to engage at least another 80 people in the process. That might be you. This fall, Beloved Conversations is rolling out a new virtual curriculum that can be done individually, though you will be placed in breakout groups with members of other congregations. Sign-ups for this will take place in September and again in February. We hope to run additional in-person groups once that option is again available post-COVID. We encourage you to consider participating and/or to pay attention to the variety of resources and opportunities for learning and acting on racial justice being offered through UUCC and the wider community. I'll close with this reflection from participant Frank Tascone. The Beloved Conversations program captured the zeitgeist of our times. Within weeks of concluding the program, we saw the killing of George Floyd and the resulting urgency of Black Lives Matter protests. Given this larger societal backdrop, Beloved Conversations provided a tangible and emotional connection between each of us as individuals, as small groups, as a larger community within the Beloved Conversations program, branching out to the congregation as a whole. The weekly Beloved Conversations meetings invited me to get to know my fellow congregates much better, and in so doing helped me to know myself better. Working together so intimately created an energy that can radiate throughout our congregation. Given the events of the past year, it is vital that UUCC continue to engage in this programming. In one of our small group meetings, it was explained that the best and most basic way white congregants can address racism and its impact is by showing up. A good first step in this regard was to participate in this program. I am hopeful that in the coming year our nation will take major steps forward in meeting its desire to create a more perfect union. Beloved Conversations can help our congregation show up as a significant conduit for these changes. Thank you, Frank, for those words. So while we can't show up in person during this time, we can continue to explore, to learn, to converse, to speak up, and to build the beloved community within our congregation and the larger community. We look forward to having you join us on this journey.
This is the message of our faith: to act with passion in the face of injustice, to love with courage in the midst of life's pain. This is the meaning of our chalice flame. May it empower our hearts until we are together again.